Okay, so as I said, I'm one of the leads for the critical care respiratory surgical team here at the Trust. So one of the projects we undertook actually in 2019 was to look at our amputee pathway, and in particular the wheelchairs. So just to give you a bit of a background to the service, the Amputee Service is based here at Queen's on Amber B on the vascular ward, and we have approximately 50 amputees that come through the Trust every year. As you can imagine, amputees it's a big life-changing surgery. So from when they have the surgery before they're discharged, they need approximately 60 hours of therapy. There's a lot that goes into the pathway in order to get the patient ready to go home. Say average is about 60 hours, depending on the patient's complexity, it may be slightly longer, but as a ballpark, that is sort of the input they need. So they need a lot of input. And when we looked at this project, the average length of stay for the amputees was between 6 and 7 weeks, which is huge. One of the reasons for that is when they had their operation, they were issued with a wheelchair from the hospital. Now, we had a very small stock of wheelchairs on site. We then had to order the patient's own wheelchair from the wheelchair service, wait for it to be delivered before we could discharge the patient home, because we were not able to send our wheelchairs out into the community. A big part of that 6-7 week length of stay was actually due to the patients waiting for their wheelchairs in order for them to go home. So this was creating a huge problem. Patients getting frustrated because they wanted to go home, they were medically fit, but we couldn't send them because the wheelchairs weren't arriving. So the therapists worked with the Red to Green service, the Red to Green team and the wheelchair service to get an on-site satellite stock of wheelchairs. So we now have some of the wheelchair services wheelchairs actually at Queen's. They have their own. This meant that they had their own wheelchairs from day one, as opposed to the hospital ones, which might be slightly different models with different accessories. So they were getting used to their own wheelchairs from day one. And as a result of that, the length of stay went right down to 2 to 3 weeks. So we halved our length of stay, which was a huge impact. In terms of numbers, we looked at 5 months before we had the wheelchairs on site and 5 months afterwards. So roughly the same number of patients. And when we looked at the length of stay, the average difference before and after, we were saving about 12 days with a median of about 5.5 days. So if you put that into sort of cost savings from the Trust, we're talking sort of £230,000 we were saving in bed days. So huge improvement from length of stay and from a financial point of view, but also huge improvement for the patients as well. So where are we today? Today we've got the wheelchairs on site. So initially they were kept in our store on the ground floor. We have since relocated, so the wheelchairs are now stored in the basement, and the cushions and all the accessories are stored in our department on the zone. With the ward being on the second floor, it's not ideal having all the stuff all around the hospital. So our current length of stay is between 3 and 4 weeks. Now that has gone up slightly, partly because of COVID. Our team has obviously been redeployed to critical care and respiratory, so we've had our staff stretched a bit more, and the patients are obviously suffering with COVID as well, so have been a bit slower to rehab. So we have lost a little bit of our length of stay. So in terms of ongoing work, we're obviously continuing to look at the amputee pathway and how we can improve it and continue to streamline the wheelchair process. And this is tied into the Prideway work that I've been doing. And I did a waste walk and standard operation things to look at the process for the wheelchairs. And with them being located all around the hospital, there's a huge amount of the process where actually it's wasted time because it's walking between different areas. So in an ideal world, we would want to relocate stock up to the second floor, a bit closer to the ward and the patients. But because of the sheer size of space that we would need to accommodate all the equipment, it's not actually possible to do that. So I'm still using a lot of the Prideway stuff to see if we can improve and streamline these services as much as possible. So when we think about what successes we had, the big success that we had with this was the reduction in length of stay, improved patient experience. The whole process for the patient was much better. We lost a lot of that frustration at having to wait around for equipment when they really wanted to get home. We continue to making improvements to our amputee pathway and how we can improve the process and the experience of the patient, and just using the Pride Way to integrate it into the pathway and into the processes to just streamline the work. And that's all I have to say. Any questions?